Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone's week is going well. I hope that your Thursdays are also off to a great start. Awesome. I'm just going to leave it probably just like 1 minute for people to join. I can see the numbers ticking up quite nicely. Hi, Pride. Yep, webinar's still on. I think I was 30 seconds late. I was just making sure I had my coffee. I hope everyone else has got their coffee as well. Maybe as we're waiting for others to join, feel free to say hello in the chat as Pride has. Maybe say who you are, what organization you're from, and where you're based in the UK. It's really really interesting to see where people are tuning in from. You know, you're from Scotland, down in Cornwall, Devon, or maybe you're closer to where I am today in London, based around Old Street. Cool. Again, just going to give it 20 more seconds, then we can really get started. Quick one, I see a few more questions already. Yep, this session will be recorded, shared after. Well, hi everyone. Yep, Daisy from Nottingham, Shanice, lovely to meet you all. Sarah, Bianca, Dan, nice to meet you, Dan. Good you're looking forward to today's session. Trying to see if I know any familiar names in there. You know, I go to lots of the care road shows up and down the country, you know, Liverpool, the Midlands, London, also at the care show. Coming up to the care show actually in October. Maybe say if you're gonna be attending that one, because get to meet Borderless and team, in person. Cool. Lots more people have managed to join now, so we're actually going to get started on this morning's webinar. Cool. So the next 45 minutes to an hour are going to be all around compulsory home office compliance, what your obligations are, the records that prove, and the records that prove you're meeting them. Just to note that this is a partner webinar that we've organized and are running in partnership with QCS. So if you're a QCS customer, lovely to meet you. If you're a Borderless customer, good to see you again. And you're really excited to be here today. This is the third out of 4 webinars we're doing with QCS. We've got a final one coming up later in the month. So let's jump into it. Just a quick one. I'm sure many of you do know who I am, so apologies. But for those that don't know, my name is William Murch. I'm lead partnerships here at Borderless. It's actually my 2-year work anniversary today, which is a coincidence. But yeah, really happy to be here. You know, I talk with organizations day in, day out around home office compliance, how they can put their best foot forward, and love meeting as many of you as possible, going to all of the regional care association shows, some of our HR shows, you know, chatting with people who are dealing with immigration day in, day out. So yeah, really happy to be here today. We're also joined by someone else from my team at Borderless, Prashanth, who's just in a Q&A in the chat, and he'll be supporting throughout as well. So, you know, as we're talking about things, you might just see some messages in there, and feel free to ask questions as we go through. But cool, why are we here today? You know, what gives Borderless the right to talk about home office compliance? And it's really the fact that, you know, we're on a mission to create a world where borders are no longer barriers and anyone can move anywhere seamlessly and safely. And what this means for you is that we're just really trying to be the best in class at simplifying the complexity of immigration for both businesses and, more importantly, actually individuals in the UK. And we're already supporting, you know, 600 organizations, tens of thousands of people. We do lots of cool and interesting stuff as well with displaced workers in the east of England. And it's a real privilege to be here. So yeah, without further ado, what are we going to be covering today? You know, this isn't just about reading the rules. Hopefully it's a practical version of, you know, looking at what you're responsible for, what an home office officer will actually be looking to see, and how to keep on top of everything without just living out of a spreadsheet. And candidly, that's what we see most of the time. I'll also leave 15 minutes at the end of today's session for some Q&A. If I can't get to your questions, if they're too niche or nuanced, I'm happy to take them offline, share them with our qualified immigration advisors, and get an answer back to you. albeit I'm deep in the depths of learning of immigration rules. I haven't set my IAA accreditation yet, so can't give specific advice on specific cases. Cool. I'm actually just going to flick to the chat as well to see how that's bubbling away. Nice. Lovely to meet you, Sazi, Faye, Karen, Amanda, Debbie, Cliff, Kelly. Thanks for saying hello. Yeah, we've got people all the way up in Scotland. We've got people down in Crawley. We've got Essex. Ndua is from Devon. I'm from Devon as well. Great to see some representation. Cool. We got people from everywhere. Preston, thank you so much, everyone. Cool. And actually, to keep us all on our toes, I'm going to kick things off just with a quick poll to sense check the room who are on the webinar today of, you know, basically what do you self-assess your compliance to be? So if people can be as honest as possible, I'm just going to put out a poll now on the right-hand side. If a Home Office auditor walked in tomorrow, how ready would you feel? Are you completely ready? Your records are current? Are you mostly, but maybe there's some gaps? Are you not ready, or you're not sure what they'd even ask for? Just going to let that sit for a second. And if you're like me as well, I'm just going to have a sip of my coffee. Cool, see some answers coming in. Also, feel free to share your experiences in the chat. Have you recently been audited? Do you have an audit upcoming? Quite often people that join these sessions are in one of those camps. Cool, but okay, so wow, answers are coming in. So it seems like no one's on their own here. We've got a handful of individuals and organizations who are ready. Your records are current, absolutely awesome. We've got some organizations who are maybe mostly ready, but there'll be gaps. I think that's where most people sit, and it's where 50% of people here today assess their own compliance to be. Some people are saying they're not ready. You know, it's a big undertaking, the Home Office coming in, so it's fair enough. And then a handful of individuals not even sure what they'd be asked for. And if you're new to sponsorship, this might be you, and that's totally fine. And we're going to tackle lots of this in the rest of today's session. Thank you so much, everyone. But I hope you can all see that you're not alone, no matter where you are in your assessment of how compliant you might be at the moment. Cool. Yeah, we've got some people. Oh, Simone saying we thought you had one coming up. It turned out to be a scam. Yep. Obviously, we're not talking about that today, but please be aware, you know, there's been lots of scammings in the world of immigration at the moment. And on your sponsor management system, the government's just put in two-factor authentication, which is really, really good. So, you know, as you wouldn't with your bank, you know, if someone's calling you up, if you're getting rogue emails from people asking you anything to do with your sponsorship at immigration, please be very, very cautious from the outset. If anything, that's probably a key takeaway from today's session too. Cool. So, you know, for years, your sponsor compliance has maybe been something perceived to be set up once and revisited when a visa was expiring. And that era is really over. And we've seen that shift over the last 12 to 18 months. You know, the license that you get as part of your immigration journey is really, you know, once granted, is the start of your obligations, not the end of it. From the day you're granted it, you carry duties around right to works, checks, record keeping, monitoring your workers, and reporting changes, all which we'll be going into as well. And you can carry them continuously, you know, for every sponsor worker on your books. And unless you want to give your sponsor license back, you've got these duties in perpetuity. The risk for most employers in this room isn't that you're cutting corners deliberately. It's that you're running a day-to-day, very busy organization trying to support and help lots of individuals, and you know, sometimes things fall through the gaps. But there's lots at stake for when things do go wrong. The illegal working civil penalty is currently set at £45,000 per worker for a first breach and £60,000 per worker for a repeat breach. You know, and these have been in place since the 13th of February 2024. I think, if I recall correctly, it makes the Home Office one of the most revenue generating government bodies there are. I think it's over £88 million in fines since 2018. And per worker is typically the part that people miss. A single broken process across 5 hires, can double up or quadruple or 5x up to £250,000. And the fine is rarely the worst of it, which we're going to talk about a bit more as well. And here at Borderless, this is actually one of my projects. I just wanted to really understand, where are these fines happening? Where are the revocations happening? And candidly, they're happening everywhere. Revocations aren't just confined to one region or one sector. They happen across the country and across industries, not just care, not just construction, not just hospitality, but companies of all shapes and all sizes. And these include employers who thought they were compliant. And the trigger for that is usually mundane, a record that wasn't kept, a change that wasn't reported, etc. But yeah, we do actually have this map that I can probably share after with anyone that's interested. You can zoom in anywhere in the country. You can see who's got sponsor license, maybe who's had theirs revocated. You can, see it kind of just follows the map of the population and companies in the UK. Lots in London, Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, and in areas of less population density, business density, and less revocations. And the numbers are quite stark as well. And this will be like the kind of, the last talking point on the state of revocations at the moment. But just in Q1 of this year, albeit we're now, entering into the second half of the year, there was over 1,500 sponsor license revocations. And if it continues on this current path, we're looking again to double the amount of revocations from 2025. And I think we've got here through a few different avenues which the government's using. We've got a new Home Secretary in place, who's been in place, for a while now, who's got a real emphasis on cracking down on organizations who are non-compliant. And unfortunately, organizations that don't mean to be non-compliant are also falling within that camp. But, I'd probably say that, a good proportion of these are companies that maybe set out to be non-compliant or have set out for nefarious reasons in the past. But a breach doesn't just cost you money. It really does climb. First of all, you can get downgraded from a sponsor license A to a B grade. You stop being able to assign new certificates of sponsorship, so the hiring freezes until you fix it. You can also get suspended. You get 20 working days to respond. No new sponsorship again within that time period. But the worst case here is revocation, isn't it? Your license is withdrawn, existing sponsor workers' permission is cut short. Typically then those people have 60 days to find a new job. And I think what's really tricky here is that it can unwind all of the great hires and individuals that have been added to your organization since you got your sponsor license. And I'm not sure about the people on today's session, but I chat with some companies, owners and registered managers alike, and a large proportion of their workforce is sponsored. So almost the bigger your sponsored workforce, the potential impact on you as an organization is going to increase. But cool, that's the end of May. Compliance is so important and what we're seeing on the ground with enforcement and compliance. But I really now want to talk about, the duties that you have, the compliance obligations you have, and we're going to be talking more about what the Home Office might be looking for as they come in. We kind of break this down into 4 continuous duties. And again, all of this is recorded and will be shared after, so no need to jot anything down. First of all, it falls into right to work checks. You need to conduct these properly and you need to keep them constantly under review, not just a day one right to work check. Secondly, you need to keep a defined set of records for each sponsored worker and you keep them up to date. You monitor your workers, their attendance, their contact details, and whether the role still matches what you sponsored them for. And then finally, you've got reporting duties. Make sure, your changes and you're reporting any changes of circumstance within the correct time period for the correct individual every time. And we're going to talk about this a bit more as well. And all of this is what the Home Office wants. You can look at their sponsor guidance, you can look at their obligations under section D, the sponsor license duties, to get further in depth. And we've got a few checklists as well. But I guess, we see these as the 4 key areas, right to works, record keeping, continuous monitoring, and then reporting anything that is changing. I'm going to go into a bit more depth now on each one. First of all, that first bucket we've described. Right to work is a duty. Lots of people, assume you've handled correctly because you did the check at hiring, but it's an ongoing thing that you actually have to do. Where a worker's permission is time limited, you owe a follow-up check before it expires, and you keep the evidence. You have to do it. You've got to save the evidence. And in 2026, the scope actually widened on right to work checks. The guidance now expects right to work verification for workers you engage beyond your direct payroll as well. So, albeit tangential to sponsorship, if you have any others that work for you, but they're not full-time, you still need to conduct those right to work checks. And a correct check gives you a statutory excuse against an illegal working penalty. However, a missing or defective one removes it. And the guidance says a license is usually revoked over where undocumented working is found. So again, right to work checks, really, really key for what you need to do with your sponsored workforce. So 2 of the 4 duties, record keeping and monitoring, and they kind of quite often sit together, are really one habit. Keeping the file true is one thing, and then reporting it on the sponsor management thing is another. So, really your record keeping and monitoring feeds into your obligations to report to the Home Office on an ongoing basis. The failure mode of this is treating the personal file as something you build at the onboarding stage or when someone joins your organization and just close it, and you're not constantly re-upping it or making sure it's accurate. On a visit from the Home Office, a stale file, something out of date, an old address, an absence nobody logged, reads as, you're really just letting yourself down, and a monitoring failure, even when the underlying situation was fine. Again, all of these are outlined by Home Office guidance and duties. And if you're really interested in the full exhaustive list of every change you must report on one page, you can either scan the QR code now, or Prashanth, who's moderating, is going to put a link into the chat to download our change of circumstance cheat sheet. So this is something you can keep for free. You can share it internally, share it with colleagues, all around everything you need to do, change of circumstance. So if you're unsure if you need to report it, this will give you some help. Cool. So now we're going to be looking further at documents, policies, and procedures the Home Office expects from you as organizations. Before I segue into that, I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat to see if there's any questions I can answer now. Andrea is asking, what are the changes that need reporting? Can you please have a clear list of what needs reporting? That's perfect timing, because I can see Prashanth has then shared the cheat list with you, such that you'll be able to know exactly everything that you need to report. Cool. Just seeing if there's any more questions there, guys. Keep the questions coming. We've got until about 10 to 12. And happy to answer as much as I can and give as much value in the session as possible. Cool. Back to the slides. So, as you all know, many of you today are sponsoring, are actively sponsoring, and the amount of documents, policies, and procedures the Home Office expects is humongous. But what exactly are they? So, Appendix D is the record that the Home Office specifically calls out and what they want to see. Again, lots of this is touching on what we've previously covered. But Appendix D, the sponsor guidance, is the statutory list of what you must keep. It's not optional or best practice, it's the duty itself. In plain terms for you, the right to work check for each worker held for the specified retention period, current contact details, the job description, the COS, and evidence that the pay meets the rate of the role. Also, things like attendance and absence tracking, and new this year, which is, I think we've got a slide on it coming up, is you have to give evidence that you've made the worker, so the sponsor worker, aware of their employment rights in the UK. And miss items on this list, and you've got a record-keeping breach. And again, you know, an enforcement officer or home office officer will look at these things. But actually, even on this note, we help countless amounts of organizations through home office audits. And even here at Borderless, a third of my colleagues are sponsored. We really live and breathe sponsorship and immigration. And not only are we saying this from the perspective of supporting organizations, but even here at Borderless ourselves, we've been audited. We have a sponsor license. We've had the Home Office unexpectedly turn up at the Borderless office. So we've also lived this firsthand. We know how stressful this can be. Fortunately, we also use our own Borderless platform, so we are in a really, really strong position. And obviously, our whole mission is about helping organizations through this. So we pass with flying colors. But I'm talking from a first-hand experience as well, not only helping organizations through this themselves. In addition to the paperwork, the Home Office expects processes, and I think a strong process can really fix many of the issues you might have. Behind the document sit the processes that produce it, and the Home Officers will also look to probe these, because a folder that looks tidy on the day doesn't necessarily prove that the process holds the rest of the year. They want to see that right to work checks are done consistently, follow-ups are diaritized, such that when your next ones are, not just remembered. They want a system for monitoring your sponsored workers, so a change in a role, address, or attendance is captured rather than missed. And they also want records kept for the right periods and retrieved on request. The guidance in 2026 went further and even asked level 1 users to keep up with changes actively. So checking the SMS message board monthly and reading the guidance in full is now expected of you. And I'm not sure the last time you did log into the SMS, you looked through the updates. Compliance is now framed as that ongoing duty to keep yourself up to date. I think that's why joining webinars and sessions like this are really helpful, because it can prompt you for maybe one or two things to go back and do. Great for me looks like I've helped a few people here today think about something they're doing not correct. They go back, they talk to their colleagues this afternoon, and they actually implement that. That's a great result, and that's what we're aiming to do. What's changed though recently? I guess, for those of you who are in a really strong position, might be really helpful. First of all, the first change is around the salary. So the salary has moved to a per pay period test. So judge every pay period from the 8th of April rather than averages across the year. The second one is just more tighter scrutiny around the role. So the job must genuinely match the description of the COS. And finally, I did just say a line on it, but the worker rights from the 26th of March this year, so it's been a few months, you must keep evidence that you've told workers their UK employment rights. I think once we saw this be announced, what we did on Borderless was we embedded part of the process for the individual. So when they're doing the visa process, they automatically can see their workers' rights and they can tick and acknowledge that they've seen and read it. So again, taking that burden off of the organization and really helping them through that process. We're going to go into some examples of this as well, because typically there's lots of questions around the salaries, SOC codes, and rights. And the first one is probably the most operationally awkward to implement as an organization. So the old approach on salaries let you think in annual terms, but the rule effective from the 8th of April 2026 checks compliance per pay period. Each payslip has to meet or exceed the minimum of that worker's role, and sponsored workers must be paid at least monthly unless the contract says otherwise. Where it really catches out good employers is in the routine stuff payroll handles without thinking. Perhaps there is pay deductibles, perhaps it's a cycle to work scheme, drive to work scheme, all of these things that can bring someone beneath a threshold. And any of those can pull a single period below the rate, whilst the annual figures still look quite healthy. And under the old rule, you are probably fine, but under this new one, that period is in a breach. And the fix is a conversation with payroll, making sure everyone's on the same note, that they're matching up within that pay period. And again, one thing you can do is like, I don't know, before running every payroll, you can take pay slips and just double check, sense check that everything is above board. And again, this is where we see, genuinely good providers and organizations with good intentions accidentally falling short because perhaps a person in payroll isn't educated or doesn't know who's sponsored, who's not sponsored, and who this is applicable to. Again, if be interested to know, is the person who's an authorizing officer within your organization also the person doing payroll? Is there a disconnect between them? I think each organization runs slightly differently. The second change is more subtle. It's caught a lot of sponsors. The old genuine vacancy requirement was reframed around whether the role is real, eligible role. It had to exist, require the specific duties and hours on the COS, meet the skill and salary level for the occupation code, and be appropriate to the business. In plain terms, it meant that the job description on the COS is now a promise you have to keep. If the roles start to drift away from this and it becomes more consistent, someone's hired into one role, they grow, they've taken on more, they get promoted, they drop to part-time. This can really impact you and your organization if that's not being reported or if a new cause hasn't been assigned when things vary too much. I think the litmus test here is if you are unsure or if you think someone's role falls outside of the cause, it's highly likely that it does. And it's always best to be on the more cautious side of things. Again, so if you're umming and ahhing, seek external help, chat internally, get the SOC code, get the job description, marry them up. Any differences, think about what you need to do next. And that could be realigning someone's job description or roles with the SOC code, or it could be potentially having to reassign a COTS. And the third change that we described, obviously is the newest, and it's probably one of the easiest ones to miss because it's a record-keeping duty rather than like a headline rule. So as of the 26th of March, you have to keep evidence that you've made sponsored workers aware of their employment rights in the UK. Things like what the minimum wage is, working time, holiday, pension, auto-enrollment, health and safety, everything you might do for your domestic staff as well. So in this case, isn't enough to just have done it. Oh, we had the meeting, we told them, we went through. You have to be able to prove it. You have to have your statutory excuse that I did run this through with that individual at this time. Evidence is now the duty. That's what's changed here. Many of you probably are already doing this, but if I ask, show me the evidence that you told this specific worker their UK employment rights when they joined, how many of you might be looking to, are unsure where to look for that? So, evidence is now the duty. Bake into the onboarding as a written step in the worker acknowledgement. They can click something, they can acknowledge you by email, you can save that, reference it in the contract. That's a good way of doing it. Have a link out, ask them to acknowledge they've read it. Keep it dated, retrievable, and make sure it exists for every sponsored worker already on your books. If by accident you've maybe missed this, one thing you can do today, go away, And I think we've got a template for this as well, which I can share. But you can rectify this like relatively quickly. So this is just a quick fix and a quick to fail on audit day if you do have an audit coming up. And this is actually where I want to talk a bit more about Halo and how Borderless does all of this for you. So here's just like a very small 58-second video. I'm just going to play looking at how Halo and the Borderless platform helps you cover all of this. So I'm just going to play now.
Halo is a brand new compliance product from Borderless. It gives you a single view of your compliance position across your entire business, including your compliance score, workers by status, any document compliance gaps, the status and remaining COS on your sponsor licenses, any changes that you need to report to the Home Office that have been flagged by Halo, and a single action that you can take per document to fill any compliance gaps. Take employment details, for example. You've got the ability to audit job descriptions across your entire workforce or even on an individual basis. We'll show you the information that we've extracted from that employee's COS and allow you to reuse that on the Borderless platform. If you need to fill any payslip gaps, you can use our smart document uploader, which will allow you to upload as many documents as you need. We'll extract information from those documents, match them against the individuals, and then we'll tell you if there are any compliance gaps that have been found in those documents. Thank you.
Cool. I hope you found that useful. That's just like a little glimpse of how, you know, what we built at Borderless helps you combat and navigate everything we've discussed so far. Cool. I'm seeing some questions in the chat around timings for reporting change of circumstances. So it's quite good that we can now tackle that and look at, for example, things like specific timings. So reporting is the quiet duty, and reporting duties run on a clock. You know, these aren't things you can just do whenever you want. Each different type of reporting has specific working days for you to report them. First of all, I just say, like, as a rule of thumb, because the reports that you have to do the quickest are 10 working days, you may as well just try and do all of them by 10 working days. And obviously the ones you have to do by 10 working days are things all around the individual, all around the worker. This can be things, for example, include change of job, change of salary, change of work location. Have they gone from site A to site B, from office A to office C? They also need to report an unauthorized absence of 10 or more consecutive days and a worker leaving or being dismissed. Where you have slightly longer to report changes of circumstances is everything to do with your organization. So organizational changes include a change of company name, ownership, or key personnel. Missing a deadline is itself a breach. Is itself a breach, separate from whatever you are also reporting. And the safe habit, as I said, you know, when something changes, assume it's all reportable within a 10 working day clock until you've confirmed otherwise. And, you know, this can really break down in an organization if different people are touching immigration or different people are aware of different things. And what's interesting here is most people will remember the ones to do with the workers. What they don't remember is like, oh gosh, maybe we changed our company name. Maybe we changed where the company is registered, or maybe there's a new shareholder in the company. So again, the sponsor license is tied with the authorizing officer and the business. And that's actually something we do at Borderless. We constantly check our customers' company's house records to see if there's any changes, then give our customers a heads up. Hey, just to let you know, you changed this. Do you want to report the change of circumstance? Again, one step ahead of the game. But there's 3 ways the report never gets done. And, you know, even if anyone wants this, you know, has this happened to them in the past as well? Perhaps the change happens in one team and never reaches the person who reports it. This is totally normal, happens in lots and lots of cases. Perhaps it could be someone, registered manager knows that someone's been absent for more than 10 days, but perhaps didn't tell the authorizing officer who's in HQ about this. therefore it wasn't reported. Perhaps you've got a chef that works for you in one location in London, and then they move to another location for a few months. That wasn't reported. Again, different people touch different parts of sponsorship, and that's why it's ever so important to have that centralized place for recording all of it. The second one, the second thing where things usually go wrong is everyone assumes someone else has logged it. There is no one person who takes full obligation and ownership with reporting these changes of circumstance. And then finally, nobody knew it was reportable in the first place. Again, these things are constantly changing. So if you didn't know it's reportable, how would you have reported it? But again, this is unfortunately doesn't stack up when the Home Office comes in, because they're like, well, it's part of your duties to know when's the last time you read Appendix D or the sponsor license duties, etc. And I imagine I'd be really impressed if someone has read all of their duties over the last few months, because it's a really, really extensive document. And, as of recently, you can be flagged without, your company can be flagged with a potential compliance visit without anyone even setting on foot. Now, given how closely some government bodies are working together, the Home Office and HMRC share things like payroll and tax data. So a mismatch between who you pay and what you pay them and what's reported can put you on the list as well. And they've specifically created the Fair Work Agency, which was launched in April 2026, to extend this enforcement reach. So you can presume now that when your payroll or whoever's checking that is checking between the pay slips and what you've reported, and you can just presume that the Home Office and HMRC are also talking about it. So some of those don't match up. You might be expecting a visit. It's hard to say exactly what triggers the Home Office audit, because there's hundreds and thousands of audits every week and every month. And, we see companies getting new sponsor licenses and companies losing theirs every day as well. But what we are seeing is that generally people who aren't on top of things are being audited more. And I think it's because of the increased communication between government departments and bodies. And again, lots of this could change as well with the new Prime Minister. But you can just, I guess, always just presume that they are talking. And if they're not, that might be beneficial. So what happens if they do visit? And again, talking from first-hand experience here, as well as supporting lots of organizations through this. And yeah, please let me know in the chat as well if this has happened to you. If the Home Office were to come and inspect you, do an audit, first of all, they don't always warn you. They can just turn up, and visits can often be unannounced and typically run from 2 to 3 hours. But I've actually, I was chatting to one organization, I think it was last year down in Surrey, and they were quite a big organization, and their audit lasted 2 weeks because they had such a large workforce. The bigger your workforce, the more documents they're going to want to see, the more individuals that they're going to want to interview. So again, this scales with the complexity of your organization. I'm just going to give you a flavor of what kind of things they might be looking to investigate. And again, none of this should come as a surprise given what we've been talking about for the last half an hour. First of all, right to work and prevention of illegal working. Secondly, your record keeping, including the new rights evidence. Current contact details for every sponsored worker. Monitoring, you proactively monitoring absences, role changes, reporting them on time. Salary paid correctly, now pay per period. And I know that they'll ask you for this evidence. Then they'll be interviewing your sponsored employees to make sure it all matches up. So you might have one address for a sponsored worker, but when they interview that sponsored worker, they'll be saying, please, can you share your address? Those two things don't match up. It doesn't shine a positive light on your ability to keep correct and up-to-date records. So this is why we believe at Borderless, you really need to build a record-keeping system that lasts. Everything we've covered has one thing in common. None of it's hard to necessarily understand. All of it is hard to keep on top of month after month, worker by worker. So the real question, we think, isn't whether you know the duties, It's whether your systems keep up with them. Everyone here today, I think there's over 100 people that have tuned into this webinar. I believe wants to be the most compliant, best organization possible when it comes to home office compliance. You wouldn't be here, I think, if you didn't want to know, you didn't want to learn. Therefore, yeah, the question isn't around, whether you know the duties. I think everyone here is smart enough to go on, read the duties, understand it. It's just keeping up with the constant change of pace and feeling confident that you've got everything in the right space. And what we see a lot of the time is people using spreadsheets. And most sponsors run compliance on a spreadsheet and a calendar reminder, and it works right until it doesn't work. A spreadsheet is a static record. It doesn't prompt you before a visa expires, a follow-up right to work check is due, or reporting deadlines lands. And it can really, especially when there's maybe multiple people that are using a spreadsheet, can have big impacts on you as an organization. I think this is what good looks like if you were to go away, you were to think about implementing a system for your organization. And that's building a system that holds up. So building that continuous right to work, salary, expiry dates, duties, checks on a cycle, not just once a year. Every check leaves a record you can produce on demand. I think I saw a question in the chat around, do I have to do it again because I didn't get the proof or acknowledgement of it? Then clear ownership as well internally, who is responsible for what, how do things get escalated, how the communication happens between teams, and also things are shared. Payroll, HR, the AO are all working on the same picture. They are all have access to the same information. And again, accountability, one named person is accountable for it all. And albeit sponsorship and immigration compliance touches multiple different people, as we've discussed, is ultimately the authorizing officer is personally responsible for your sponsor duties. And a system that depends on memory is a lot to carry alone. We also do specific sessions for authorizing officers if you are here today and one. Ultimately this falls on you, whether or not you have a team to support you or an individual to support you. And that's essentially how we help a Borderless. Borderless is the end-to-end platform for UK work visas, from sponsor licenses to settled hires. We track, as you saw in our short video, everything to do with the individual, everything to do with payroll. We can get you more causes. We can report the change of circumstance, and we're IA accredited immigration advisory firm. I'm just looking through the window now. I can see our immigration team. I can see Alina. I can see Lowell. You've probably seen them on other webinars. All of them who are there, who are going through everything with a fine-tooth comb, making sure it's above board to put your best foot forward with the Home Office. And again, we're not just saying we do this. We support over 600 employers, 13,000 workers protected, and of the companies we support, they have about roughly a 95% compliance score 90 days after joining, and compliance is a continuous spectrum you've got to keep on top of. Again, this is Paddy, one of our customers at StatFix. He's just saying, instead of juggling spreadsheets and manual reminders, you've got complete visibility across the sponsored workers. The final thing for me, if you remember 3 things from today, actually I want to add in that 4. Be wary of any scams to do with sponsorship and immigration. Please be wary of who's got access to your sponsor management system and phishing emails. That was another reminder you can take away, but the 3 things specifically to do with this session. The license is the start of your duties rather than the end of it. And right to work, records, monitoring, reporting all run continuously. Even if you had no sponsored workers, you would have to do change of circumstance to your business if there was a change. The records are also not optional. Appendix D is the list. And recently, from April, we've seen that there's new rights evidence per pay period, salary and role that has to match. And finally, reporting runs on the clock. So when something happens, assume 10 working days until you've confirmed otherwise. Cool. We're now just going to segue into some questions. But before I do, if you want to maybe figure out where your compliance currently sits, we've got a really fun, interesting calculator, which you can use, which we actually launched 2 weeks ago. Maybe if you've still feeling a bit unsure about where you land or not confident, or just want to chat with one of our experts, feel free to book in some time, see how Borderless can support you. I'm now just going to flick over to the chat and see what I can support people with. So Nanda's asking, do you report changes, updates on behalf of your clients? So what we will do, we'll let you know, because we're integrated with your sponsor management system, what you need to report and when. So we will flag, hey, we've just seen this change, you need to report this. Ultimately, you'll come into the Borderless platform, click accept, and then what our immigration experts do is they read that reporting, they read the change to make sure, yep, this looks good. Then we'll report it on your behalf, and that goes straight onto the sponsor management system. What are your charges for example, a church or charity hiring 1 or 2 staff on COS? We actually support a number of charitable organizations already, and pricing really depends on what support and level of support you need. We've got some individuals that organizations that might need a lot more support, and we've always got pricing to match the level of service you require. Dan's, yeah, we can send you details with the compliance platform, or if it's easier, just feel free to scan the code or book in some time with someone from our team. And what we can do is like we'll walk you through end to end. We'll show you how to get more causes. We'll show you how to assign a visa, and then also how the Halo part of our platform keeps your compliance in a really good spot. What I like about it is, the team have built this with people who deal with sponsorship. Even here at Borderless, we use it ourselves. We're a sponsor, which is really strong. Do you need to have a COS business continuity plan? Not sure what you mean by that, Debbie, but when it comes to COSs, I think it's really important to always be one step ahead of thinking, how many COSs do you have? How many COSs are you going to need to assign? I think I did a session on Tuesday, actually, all around certificates of sponsorship, and that was a masterclass. So we've got webinars and sessions on COSs. Frank is asking, salary pay period, is that the 3 months rolling pay, or do you mean each month must comply? So Frank, it's down to each pay period. So if you pay them every fortnight, it's within that period. If you pay them monthly, it's that period. Obviously, sponsored workers need to be paid every month as well. So it could be 1 month, it could be weekly if you pay them weekly. Just seeing a question. When a company wishes to take over, they have to apply for a license, but what will happen to existing sponsors? Yeah, we help companies actually go through this process. So a company with sponsored workers can be taken over. It could be change in leadership, ownership, and most of the time, a new sponsor license will need to be granted to the new company, and the people can be 2P'd over. The immigration process is called 2P, T-U-P-E, and they will transfer under protection of employment to the new sponsor license. So there doesn't have to be a discontinuous block between the two sponsors. People again asking about the pay period. So the pay periods are specific to how you pay the individuals. So if the pay period, if you pay them weekly, it's over the weekly. If you pay them monthly, it's over the monthly. It can't be every 3 months because you need to pay sponsored employees monthly. Faye is asking, we hold a carer who was doing the additional 20 hours with you. Main sponsor lost their license. Yep, that's unfortunately what we're hearing across the board. She was not transparent about this. does this affect us for still offering her for the 20 hours while she was not meeting her contracted hours with the main sponsor due to license being revoked? Faye, this is a very grey area and a great question. I presume that you were doing the right to work checks. As long as that right to work check comes back and says they have the right to work in the UK, you have your statutory excuse to allow that person to continue working with you. I forgot the name of it now, but I will send it after. You can also do a more in-depth right to work check via that's an employer checking service, ECS. So essentially, if you check the individual with a government employer checking service and they say, yep, this person has a right to work, that lasts and trumps anything else for 6 months. Constant, can we pay for just the system Halo when Borderless is not level 1 user? As part of us making sure you're compliant, we need to be added to your sponsor management system. We cannot keep organizations compliant without knowing what's on the sponsor management system. Halo is built to check and make sure that everything is in correct order. It's hard for us to understand what's in correct order if we can't see what's on the SMS. Someone's asking, does this apply for work on a skilled worker visa that is not on PAYE? If that's when you... Okay, well, sorry, I'm just rereading the question. Does this all apply to work on a skilled worker visa that is not paid? I guess you might be alluding to people who are working part-time for your business up to 20 hours a week. Yeah, you do need to do continuous right to work checks and keeping all of the relevant information about them. Someone's saying, can Borderless keep track of the workers who are doing the extra 20 hours? Yeah, so you can have people who are doing supplementary hours with you on the Borderless platform. So we'll just let you know all of the documents you need. And again, just building that statutory excuse. I've said that a few times now, but it's around... in the case where if someone is not honest with you saying they've lost their primary sponsor, but you have done everything within your ability, the Home Office asked of you, and it's someone not being too transparent, then you've built your statutory excuse. In most cases, you're going to be okay. It's when, oh, they were dishonest and we didn't do our checks. That's where things can get a bit slippery. Caroline's asking, I thought we were not allowed to allow access to anybody in the SMS. No, so on your SMS, you have obviously the authorizing officer. You can also add like level 1 users. So that's if multiple people within your organization need to report stuff. And then it's also for when, for example, with Borderless, you have third-party support from an immigration advisory firm. This is very common practice. There's lots of firms out there that help with immigration matters. And, as part of onboarding to Borderless, we get added as a level 1 representative. When you join us, that means that we can report on the SMS on your behalf and support you with anything to do with sponsorship and immigration. Cool. Conscious, we've got 5 minutes left, and I've been rambling on. Apologies if there's 1 or 2 questions I haven't been able to answer. We will endeavor to answer them offline. And there may be just a few as well, which I'm maybe not able to answer, given I'm not IA accredited. And Frank, yeah, we can get back to your question offline. Some of my team will just drop you an email for that one, around the rolling window for pay. Nanda's asking, how often should we do right to work checks as the above case demonstrates the worker may hide negative news? Cool. Cool. Yeah, so lots of these questions, for example, the right to work check, if you just download our right to work checklist, checklist, it will be able to answer that. The list of policies required by the Home Office. See, they are published by the Home Office, so you can go onto them, but we've tried to distill them as best as possible on our website. So there's checklists to support you there. And if you're ever unsure, feel free to find some time with us. But awesome. I hope you've all found this session really helpful. At the end, I think just a quick feedback questionnaire is going to come up. It's actually been like a real privilege. I hope I've helped some people think about things differently, helped some people increase their compliance across the board. And it's a bye for me today, but I'm doing these webinars quite often. I'll also be at the Care Show in October. If there's any care providers here today that want to come and say hello to me, Borderless, anyone in the team, so feel free to come and say hello in October. Check out the other webinars and stuff we're doing on the Borderless website. But perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. Already see a few thank yous. I really, really appreciate that. I enjoy doing these sessions. And yep, this session will be recorded, and you can access the recording after, because we can put it on YouTube for you. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Looking forward to receiving your feedback.